Welcome to the distribution demo for June 16th, 2022. And today I will be showing some of the work I've been doing on the UBI pipeline certification. And with that, let's get started. In the demo notes, I have links to the merge request, which is modifying the UBI pipeline, along with the link to the pre-flight repository that I use for the pipeline. So let me get started with share screen. There we go. So this is the section of the CNG pipeline. It's actually one of the subfiles, the .GitLab. Let's just pull this up. .GitLab CI UBI GitLab CI.yaml is the actual file this is in. This is the new certification job. Built it out as a template, and then we just reference that template for each of the images we need to certify. Fairly standard. I mean, we have login to the since we're fully within Red Hat land, we're using Podman. That's what the is in the pre-flight binaries. Podman's installed instead of Docker. So we log into the GitLab registry, and then basically we just call pre-flight. There are a couple of additional options that allow us to submit the report directly to Red Hat when we're done, which is the -- submit, and you need to give it a, I think it's at the beginning here. You need to give it the Red Hat token to be able to submit the reports. Then we just check to make sure we pass, and we'll pass the job. If the job fails, that means we did not certify that image, so we can go back and look at it. And then each image that needs to be certified just is a job stanza that references the template, which image we want to certify. Project ID, although Hussein has a couple of comments, and I'm actually going to be making a change to this where the project ID will disappear, because we already have the project ID in a file in the repository. So I've just been adding YQ to the pre-flight image, and with YQ we'll pull that project ID out up here in the script and use it in the script area. So we'll eliminate the need to maintain the project ID here, or at least multiple places. And then we throw the needs dependency on there. That way we can run the certification job as soon as the image, the final image has been cut in the pipeline. And then that's just duplicated for all the images, all 11 of them or so that we have. Now with that, what I can do is basically I'm going to just run this command from the container, just without all the additional API tokens and certifications or the submitting certifications and so forth. Again, this only affects UBI pipeline. Does not affect regular CNG pipeline. So I've got the pre-flight Docker image local. It's 1.2.1, which is the latest release that they have had. It calls, once the Docker image is up and running, we call pre-flight check container, and we give it an image name. And that's all we really need to do. This actually makes our certification pipeline a heck of a lot easier than what we've had in the past, because now it just fits into our pipeline versus us trying to submit stuff back to Red Hat, trying to trigger the image run or the certification run on their side, and everything else. It's always been just problematic. The other thing that this does for us is we get the actual certification results as an artifact of the jobs. So if we want, we can go investigate it, look into those certification JSON outputs to see what actually is going on. And we'll see that here in a minute. So it takes a little bit to run because it's pulling the image each time it runs a certification. So it does take a little bit oomph to get it going. Once it's pulled down that image, the output just pretty much comes not flying by, but comes pretty quickly. We'll see
Good
that.
question,
Yeah.
George. Even considering that's a really tiny job by all means,
Hmm.
did you think of maybe making it something external that we can pull from all the projects so we have one job definition across everything that tries to scan with Red Hat's pre-flight, so that whenever the pre-flight calls change, we only have one place to change it. Just kind of thinking aloud.
I'm trying to understand your question. I'm not
Okay,
quite there.
so you're first off, like you're doing the scanning for the UBI images in the CNG. I'm doing the
Right.
same thing in the operator.
Yep.
And runner folks are doing it in their own repo as well, or
Correct.
they're doing it manually. I don't know anymore. But wouldn't it be beneficial to kind of throw that into a template that could be included from multiple pipelines
I
and
see what you're saying.
just
Yeah.
create a kind of library project with this? Even though it's like really simple at the moment, I wouldn't be surprised to find it extending.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a possibility. I was just looking at partly for pre-flight. I was starting to add some container scanning onto that, and we have uh, in the pipeline template repo, the one that Red Hat's, excuse me, that GitLab puts out there. Um, that was there, so I've been adding that in. I could see where we might put that in there, but I wonder is that a little too specific to
Well,
go into our.
for us, their majority of things are basically the Podman login is a must if you're doing third party
Correct.
repo, because as I discovered, so that's one thing that is not optional. So everybody will have to do it. And again, it wasn't quite obvious from their documentation or from our documentation or from any documentation that that needs to
Right.
be done. So having that as a common template for everybody to use could be of use if we have more components trying to follow the suit, which is, I don't know whether that's the case.
I guess my question, and we can take this offline, discuss it, figure
Yeah,
it
yeah.
out. I like the idea of making a common template. Certainly among the 3 or 4 repos that are using it today, or they're going to be using it today. Um, I'm just not sure what's the best way to distribute that. I'm just not convinced it should go into the public pipeline templates that everybody has access to off of GitLab.com.
Oh yeah, yeah. There, like you can actually include things from a specific project if you need to.
Yeah,
So
I guess you
we
could.
can
Yeah,
utilize that piece, I
that's
think.
a that's a thought too. Okay, let's sort of. I'm gonna make a note of that, but let's continue discussing that, figuring out what. And again, we should probably. I mean, you and I you could use it easily. We should probably get the runner team involved to just discuss. Here's a template you can use and see what their requirements are too, to see if it
Yeah,
affects what we want to do.
exactly.
All right. Sort of gonna love the autocorrect so that all my misspellings get corrected. All right, come on, there we go. Let's look at this output a little bit more. All right, so we started up. There's not a huge number of tests that do occur at this point. I suspect this will grow over time from Red Hat, but um, so because I think there were actually more tests when we were running the certification on Red Hat's certification pipeline. Um, excuse me. But so in this case, everything passed, and then so this is basically standard out, excuse me, standard error. What comes out of the container. This is standard out, which is I redirect into a file. This is the JSON results. And then within the job, we specifically look at this value right here, the pass, if it's true or false. And if it's false, that's when we fail the job. That way we get at least a visual indication in our pipeline that, hey, we had a image that didn't certify correctly. Now, the one good question might be, and maybe I should put this into the MR, is maybe do we fail the pipeline if we fail a certification, or do we do the allow failure and just so it warns us? That's a question we need to probably figure out. Right now, it will fail anyways because we have, and I'll demonstrate that here in a second. We have Alpine certificates that's failing, but that's failing because of the some of the labels, some of the Docker labels are blank.
I'm guessing we could allow for the pipeline to fail, but that's a conditional. Like when we doing the release tags, that's when we need to publish them as well.
Yep.
If the certification fails, we cannot really publish it into Red Hat's marketplaces and whatnot. So that's where things become really important. But I don't know whether we want to do it earlier than that.
That's sort of my feeling too, a little bit. And I know DJ, you're here. That's great because you do a lot more with the release stuff and so forth. So you probably have a much better thought or feeling as to whether we should, if we have an image or a number of images that fail certification, do we go ahead and just break the UBI pipeline and force us to go fix it, or do we sort of say, well, the images are cut and let it go through and so forth?
I think initially, like for the first pass, we probably want it to allow failure. And the reason for that is in the release pipelines, if the pipeline fails, the automation may not allow the publish final steps to run, or like the later steps in the release tooling may not run.
Right.
But that being said, being that we have this and now like we can run this earlier, we'd like to be able to catch the failures earlier. So it really depends on how like stable this becomes, right? Because if it's really showing us like the actual issues, and when there's an issue, it's an actual issue we would want to care about, it would make sense to not even allow it to fail, almost ever, I think, right? But it really depends on how
stable. Yeah, I agree. And given our history, we've gone to the allow failure for all this stuff because of the amount of problems we've had. And I think I sort of agree that yes, initially we do allow the failure just to test the waters until we feel a lot more confident, I guess.
Yeah, and then the flip side though is that if we're depending on this during releasing, we need to know that it's failed during the release, right? And the allow failure often hides that from us. So that's when we would come in and either make sure that even with allow failure, we were getting Slack notifications somehow, or we would need to switch to not allowing failure and just making sure release tools wasn't blocked.
Yeah. Now I can't think of a way to make it conditional upon a release and not a release other than having two jobs, and one of them is run normally, which would be the allow failure, and then at the release time the other one ends up running, which forces the failure. Is there another way we could handle that at this time?
I don't know, actually. It would be dependent on whether the allow failure accepts like conditionals or not, which probably not.
I don't think it does. I think it's just a true false.
Yeah, most likely.
If it was
true false, but
if it was accepting the parameter, the variable, we can have that variable default to to allow failure true, and then the release tools will supply false. But I don't know.
Yeah, if it does the variable parsing, that would be the option. The alternative is that you create two jobs, but they're actually just like you create a template job, right? And then you have two where the only difference is whether it's allow failure or not.
Yeah, and whether this one runs only on a release and this one runs every other time. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's the only way I could envision it.
But it'd be good to check to see if allow failure parses variables. I have my doubts, but
Yeah, me too. um, okay. All right, so that's a complete success. Let's I've got queued up here the command for the Alpine certificates, which is the only container that's failing today. So let's run that. Again, this will take a little bit of time. Which normally we don't care because it's in the pipeline. Now that we're doing the demo, it's like, come on, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. There we go. It's a smaller, it's a smaller image. It comes faster. And here's the one that fails. Whoops, scrolls off the page. It's the has required label. And so, and looking at that, and then of course we get the nice thing is we see pass failed or false. So that's where we can trigger in our pipeline job to say it failed and fail the job itself, and that's done right here.
What we could do is we can trigger the issue bot based on that.
We could. That's true too.
So we don't have to muck about with allow failures. Just make it tolerant to the failures. Just open a ticket.
Well, that opens a ticket so we address it, but if it's in a release, we might still want to fail.
Yeah, I know.
And so, yeah, like I say, the only reason I can see this happening is, do I have it locally or do I have to pull it? Looks like I probably have to pull it.
Run Podman images. Oh, no, you were running it from within the other container. Yes.
Yeah, I'm running it from my desktop. So yeah, I don't see Alpine images. Okay, so registry blah. And of course, if you run, and I've done this a couple times because I forget to put the -UVIA on my branch. If you run it against regular images, it fails left and right all over the place. Colon 32. Yeah, 3298. I don't know if less works well in this environment. Right here, the labels, everything looks good. The release and the version, everything else is labeled up. And if you compare these labels against an image that's passing, those are the only differences, is that these are empty. So that's the only thing I can figure. So I think once we get something into those spots, I think the Alpine certificates image will start passing. So I have a MR opened up, or not an MR, an issue opened up about that. Should be easy to fix. We currently do try to put the GitLab version into those labels, which is what's used on a number of other images. But they're not going there. I think the only thing, and I haven't looked at it extensively, I think what's going on is that with the other images, we probably have a script we're running to determine what versions or what version numbers we should use. And we may not be running that for the Alpine certificates. So, but that's about all I've got. Are there any other questions or thoughts or concerns? Good, bad, anything for the order?
I noticed that they Red Hat publishes a Docker file for the OpenShift pre-flight themselves.
Yep.
Is there a reason that we use our own other than getting JQ on it? Is there like a general strategy that we don't want to depend on upstream images because it's pretty simple to build our own here, or is
Well,
it just a decision there to?
sorry, I got a contact move around on me, but
Sure.
originally, originally I was not finding anything, image for pre-flight at all. It was just the binary out
Okay.
there, out of their repo. Now, whether that Docker file was out there and I just wasn't seeing it, or whether it appeared after we were doing it, I don't know.
Okay.
So it was easy enough for me to just grab the image, throw it into a container for us to do some pre-testing and so forth. Because they had been promising us pre-flight for 2 or 3 months before they actually finally released it as a beta. And so as soon as we basically were able to get our hands on it, I wanted to start playing with it because that was going to solve a lot of our problems. And they were pretty much, actually almost the time they released it, they turned off all our other certification methods too. So it broke us a bit. So, and today we're still broken until we get this finalized and out to the pipeline. The other advantage we have is that yes, we do put in JQ and YQ now. I'm just adding YQ today so that we can process specifically pull these project IDs out of the existing YAML file that's in the repository today. I don't expect we're going to be putting a whole lot more into the pre-flight binary. I don't think we need a lot more. I don't want to make it big. And so the other requirement there becomes when they start releasing, and they've done this once recently as they did a release, and I revved from the 1.1.0, which was the original release they had, to the 1.2.1, which is what we're using today, which fixes a couple of problems. We just have to keep an eye out there for a while, or every once in a while, to see if there's a new release. And if so, we go rebuild our copy. So that's principally why. It's just at the time I couldn't find anything, and then we've been adding a few minor things for our use.
Okay. So. Yeah, I can't see it. Who knows? It's probably buried in Quay somewhere if they're even publishing it.
Yeah, it very well could be. I mean, I couldn't find any reference to where it was published, so I just gave up and said it's easy enough for me to throw together a quick Docker container. Yeah. Cool. I mean, that is actually sort of one of the questions that I've sort of had a little bit is right now the pre-flight repo is in my area, my personal area. Should we think of moving that to one of the other build areas just so it's more visible? I don't know. And maybe not initially, maybe it's okay just where it is, but I think eventually maybe we need to put it where it's a little bit more supported.
My guess would be to move it over into the infrastructure, the distribution team infrastructure.
Yeah.
Group there. That's my bias.
No, and I'm quite happy with that. I mean, it's easy enough to do. It's not that hard to move it over there.
But speaking of rebuilding container, that's where I see that having a common template that everybody's going to inherit is going to be even better, because as soon as we need to update the container, we don't have to go and chase it across the board to make sure that the pre-flight is working properly.
That's true.
I'm starting to feel more and more like inclined to go that route.
Maybe that's what we'll do. Maybe we put the template in the pre-flight repo, so it's there. It's everything, all the collateral's right there, and then we just reference it from that repo. I sort of like that idea.
Yeah.
I'm just not familiar enough with how to reference a template in other repos, but that's.
Oh, I can bring it up real quick.
I was gonna say that's just a simple do a 2-minute worth of research to find it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, well I like that idea.
Because as it stands, I can even start importing that job from the CNG, but that would look weird, me importing it from operator, like an operator from the CNG.
Yeah, exactly. So that will be the plan. Let's I'm gonna keep, pardon me just a second. I'm gonna go to turn my video off for a second while I get my contact out. It just keeps poking me in the eye. So yeah, I'll just put that to the side for the moment and put it in later. But for now, I'll keep pushing the CNG MR forward to get the certification in there. We'll start making within the next week or so, get the pre-flight repo moved over to distribution, and start getting the template in there. And then once all those pieces are in place, we can go back and just put a quick MR together to move the template into CNG. And then that's available for you and the operator, Dimitro. And meanwhile, we can start having discussions with rudder team as to how do they do it, and see if what we've got satisfies them, or if we can help them with our template, modify our template for their use too. I think that's a plan.
Yeah, I think having it as a separate repo will engage the runner folks even more so. So it's not tied to any of our code base, not really.
Yep, exactly. So, all right, good. I think it's been a good demo then. It looks like we're about time anyways. So unless there's anything else, I would say we're done.
Sounds good. Thanks, Gerard.
Right.
Oh. Have a good day, everybody.
All right. Thanks, Gerard.
All right. Bye-bye.